only 5 minutes-ish. Yeah. So the task teams were set up to support the design of the next phase of the coupled model intercomparison project, CMIP7. There's a total of 6 task teams, and we are fortunate enough to have at least 1 Australian representative on 5 of the task teams. And in this short overview, Zeb and I will present on some of the work that's been done in the climate forcings task team. So this slide just shows you the members of the task team. It's led by Paul and Vasily, and then we have Zeb Nichols from the University of Melbourne and myself from CSIRO as the Australian team members. Some of the goals of the task team. The first goal is to evaluate the existing CMIP6 forcings to identify issues and gaps. Also work on identifying the next generation forcings for current and next generation climate models. Models are getting more complex, they include more processes, and some of these processes require additional forcings. One of the targets is also to deliver and develop an updated forcings near real time, at least 2021. Currently, our historical simulations only run until 2014, so it's really time to update the forcings. Another aspect is to coordinate with modeling groups to test new forcings. This is really important. And again, we have 5 modeling centers represented on this task team that could help with that process. Some of the challenges and lessons learned. One of the main issues with the forcing in CMIP6 was the huge delay in providing some of the data. That was particularly critical for the scenario MIP due to the tight deadline for AR6. Some things that have worked well. The forcings for the DEC experiments were provided on the ESGF. They were version controlled. That added transparency, traceability, and reproducibility. So that was a good thing. Also, the input for MIPS documents, they provided a really comprehensive summary of the available forcing datasets. And initial datasets for at least some of the forcings were available to modelers for review and testing beforehand. Some of the things that did not work so well, not all of the forcings were available on the ESGF, and there were lots of technical issues as well around inconsistent units, last-minute changes to some of the forcings, changes in the variable names, file names, and the ESGF interface in general was a bit clunky. Zeb, if you are online, you can take over from here if you would like.
Thanks, Tilo. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep.
Perfect. And hi everyone, and thank you, Tilo, for putting these slides together. Tilo's done much more work than I have. And everyone in the room who had a CMIP6 delay, I apologize for the contribution I made to that delay, because I was at least partially responsible. But looking forward, some of the things we're thinking about is extending the forcing to 1750 to try and investigate this question of what forcing happened before 1850 and the impact that land use change had on that. This would cause likely a lot of problems for many groups, so it's one of those ones that's being discussed but is not necessarily set in stone yet. And then the other one is how we can try and better line up with the global stocktake and how that could work, what it would mean for scenario generation processes, and how we could make that all nicely shake together and work together in a way that made things as simple as possible for modeling groups, whilst also let us update the science as we went. Let's go to the next slide, Tilo. So you're not expected to read this slide, but one of the things that we're trying to work out is also the interdependencies between forcings. So there's a surprising amount of dependencies. So for example, all the ozone inputs for anyone who's not running a chemistry model actually depend on the greenhouse gas forcings and the aerosol forcings and a few others. And so we're trying to put together a figure that gives us an overview of those interdependencies and actually how long it would take to go end to end. So to create a complete internally consistent data set. And that's an ongoing question for us. And hopefully if we can get that answered, we'll have a much better sense of how realistic keeping up with the global stock take is, how quickly we can do updates, how real time we can make them. And hopefully that will allow us to also communicate more clearly to modeling groups what to expect when and what sort of updates could be done on a repeatable, regular cycle. Thanks, Tilo. Let's go to the next one. And then I think the last thing to point out is where there's this survey which is open, which we would love to hear from people. We were trying to get as much feedback as possible on the forcings and how people have found them, what problems were experienced, where things could be improved. And so if you've got any time, the survey takes about 5, maybe 10 minutes to complete. It will be really helpful to get some feedback on that, and the deadline for responding's been extended. I think we're planning on discussing this at our next task team meeting. I think the one other thing I would say is that it's really helpful to have, as people have highlighted already in this room, both modelers and forcing input generators and observation focused people, because those communities talking together can actually help the whole pipeline work much, much more smoothly, which I think makes a big difference and can let us spend more time on doing science and less time worrying about whether we've got the units of things right or whether we've formatted our files correctly, which we hopefully can solve those problems over the coming months and years. Tilo, I think that's everything from me.